I always thought that it was just kind of hard to meet people, like make new friends. I've always loved meeting new friends, even if I go to, let's say one of my friends, one of their good friends has a birthday party or something, me going to that birthday party is always fun. It's always great to meet new people. And I feel like once I graduated and became an investment banker, I kind of stopped meeting people. So I said, whether it's friends, whether it's dates, I feel like there needs to be a little kind of difference maker in this world. And that's kind of what breeded Lunge.
Hey, Mile 40 fam. Are you craving a social life without the hangover? I'd encourage you to join Zero Proof. It's a lighthearted community diving into all things connection, lifestyle, and fun without the drinks. From wellness tips and product highlights to real life stories and every way to have a blast beyond the bar, Zero Proof has you covered. Be a part of the Zero Proof movement and take your social game up a notch. It's honestly one of my favorite newsletters. I'm going to put the link in the show notes for you all. Check it out. And if you enjoy it, tell them that Mile 40 sent you over. Again, check out Zero Proof. Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. We are into the new year at this point, and I hope everybody had a great holiday season. And I would just want to say thank you for your continued support. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, make sure you follow along. Give the show a review. It goes a long way. Check out the show notes. Pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. There's a discount code in there. And as you know, I will sign it and personally send it out myself. I am super excited for today's guest. Today, I have Steve Cole. Steve Cole, he's the founder and CEO of Lunge, the leading social fitness app. Lunge connects people through in real life fitness communities and events and is well known for their singles run clubs. Steve is also a swimming fitness content creator with over 700,000 followers across all his socials. He played D1 water polo, competed in 2 national championship finals, and even participated in Olympic development programs. Steve, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. And, I was telling you before we hopped on, that's 2 water polo national athletes in the last 5-6 episodes. And so that's pretty special.
I like it. We're taking over. I'm glad to hear that the sport is growing or something like that.
And, I think there's, just in kind of gathering some preliminary information there's a lot of parallels to kind of throw at between the two of you and a lot of the other guests that have been on the show. And I think a lot of that just has to do with sports in general. And we're gonna dive into all that. But why don't we give the audience just some quick background? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What was childhood like?
Yeah, so childhood was great. Grew up right outside of New York City in a suburb, and amazing childhood. I'd say I always played like 2 to 3 sports a season, whether it was club or with my school. Just played every single sport there was on the planet. Started playing water polo when I was 8 years old, so that's always been a really big part of my life. I noticed I kind of got pretty good at that pretty quickly. Lots of traveling and everything like that because on the East Coast, water polo is not that big. But I was really fortunate because the town that I grew up in is actually a water polo hub.
What town?
Greenwich.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, in like the Junior Olympics last year, they kind of go like city by club team. And I think like 2 of the top 10 teams in the country are both from Greenwich. So yeah, we kind of rep the East Coast, and great childhood. And it all kind of led me to get recruited to USC. When I got recruited there for water polo, they were actually the 5-time reigning national championships. So I was like, hey, well, that's pretty cool. If you could win 5, you could probably win 6. Fortunately, that was not the case. We ended up going to 4 national championship finals in a row. Lost all
4.
Lost all 4.
That's like some Buffalo Bills action right there.
It really is. Lost all 4. Lost three to UCLA, which is like our crosstown rival. So yeah, tough luck there. And then, of course, the year after we left, they won again. So
Wow. So do you think you were the problem?
uh, I joke about it, but maybe, I guess.
No, that's funny, man. Talk to me a little bit about, just personality wise. What were you like? What was your superlative if you had one back then?
Yeah, I'd say always been a really hard worker. I've always loved the idea of sports just because, like, you talk about heart, having that ambition, like that can really portray itself in a lot of these sports. And I think that's one thing that I've always had growing up as a kid, bleeding into, college water polo, all that. I'd say that was always there.
What about socially? And I say this because to the listeners out there, if you're not watching on video, he's got a killer stash. He's a good looking dude. It takes a certain kind of personality to take the realm of building an app like this that's completely grounded in social fitness, right? Like you're probably not an introvert. So tell me a little bit what you were like socially.
Well, yes and no. I'd say that I have been pretty extroverted. Especially in college. But I always thought that it was just kind of hard to meet people, like make new friends. I've always loved meeting new friends, even if I go to, let's say one of my friends, one of their good friends has a birthday party or something, me going to that birthday party is always fun. It's always great to meet new people. And I feel like once I graduated and became an investment banker, I kind of stopped meeting people. So I said, whether it's friends, whether it's dates, I feel like there needs to be a little kind of difference maker in this world. And that's kind of what breeded Lunge.
What led you into the world of banking? Was it because everybody was becoming a banker? You knew you were going to move to New York, and that was going to be your path of least resistance?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it also like I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do right out of college, but I said, hey, look, I'll tell anyone. I know people say investment banking sucks. I'll tell anyone to go do it because it's going to be absolutely killer experience. It's going to cut your teeth, and then whatever you do after that, it will put you in the right position to do that. I mean, I started a dating app after investment banking, but I can tell you right now, I got so much experience from investment banking that helped me through that process.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it before we hopped on. The amount of people that have been on this show who had a stint in investment banking and have gone on to do what they've done. You would think there is no real alignment between a lot of these things, but the truth is that, that year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is of just getting, beat up really kind of helps you uncover some capabilities that were probably innate in you the whole time. Um, and I would love to see like a study about this to see like what some
Seriously.
of the things that people have done post working, in that kind of environment. Uh,
Yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but I mean, for me, I'd say the real difference makers, number one, you're surrounded by some really smart people and learn from them. Number two, just attention to detail. Like you see everything. And number three, I think just like the sense of ownership and always delivering A+ level work and not being allowed to do B or C level. I feel like in any industry that really adds up. But I'd love to hear from you what you feel like you kind of took away from it.
Absolutely. You say attention to detail, and in my head, I immediately go back to flashbacks of please fix on spreadsheets and on slides,
Yeah,
because, you would think that, you went to a good college, right? You're a smart kid, you came out, you're a hard worker. You'd think you've got it pretty figured out, and then there's just always someone about above you being like, "Hey, man, you missed this, you missed that." And after a point, you're like starting to get annoyed by it. But what you're starting to realize is the fact that there are a lot of details out there that perhaps like, you're just not recognizing. And there's nothing wrong with you for it. It's their job to kind of call you out on it. And it's your job to adjust as gracefully as possible. So I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of the people that come on this show who've had that background definitely talk about the misery behind it, the darkness of those years, the lack of fulfillment that they may have felt. But I do think I would agree with you, as difficult as it is to accept, that we wouldn't be where we are if we weren't put in that situation back then, right? We
I
kind of were
one
equipped.
Yeah, 100% agree. And actually, what you just said, lack of fulfillment, that's probably the answer of why I ended up leaving investment banking. Number one, I'm actually really proud of myself for taking that leap because that's not easy to do. But it's something that I did notice and said, I'm really not fulfilled doing what I'm doing and spending every day in Excel and PowerPoint, and decided to take action and make a change about it. But I'm really glad I did it, and I encourage anyone else, even if they are in investment banking or any other job, if they are not fulfilled, like do something about it. If you have a dream, go after it.
I think that's a really good point to call out because, again, another theme that has come up consistently in this specific situation around not being fulfilled. And maybe I want to dig into this a little bit, right? Because when I didn't feel fulfilled during my years in banking, it's not only because I didn't feel like I was doing enough with my own potential, but it's also because I didn't feel like I was doing enough for the world and for those around me, right? Like I felt like I wasn't actually contributing to society. The only people that I was actually helping out were these, executives that, quite frankly, I didn't really like because they weren't nice. They weren't like nice
Right.
people,
You're
you
just
know?
making like rich people richer,
You're making rich people richer,
Yeah.
and yeah, and you're not always getting rewarded for it, whether it's whether it's recognition or money. You're not always getting recognized for it. So that was a struggle that I had, and I feel like um, the last guest, Dylan, she was on this show and she talks about, and again, another thing that comes on the show a lot is, you know, being your true self in the office. Like she would wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to teach spin classes before she walked into the bank, and she didn't really want to tell them that she was a flywheel
It's
instructor.
crazy.
Yeah. And like me, like once I found my fitness community, like I was able to kind of draw that barrier between like what I don't want work taking away from me. Like work is not going to take away this community from me. I've shared this story before on the pod. I Googled how to write break barriers at the bank because I felt like they weren't making good use of my time, especially, toward my 7th year in. I felt like, I might as well do something. And that's how it got started. So talk to me a little bit about, fulfillment, what it means to you, and what it is that you were seeking at the time.
Yeah. At the time, I was really just I felt like I hit my cap, especially in investment banking, because I got the highest rated, rating you can get as an associate. And I was just like, what's next after this? Like it doesn't fill my glass. So, I've always had this one idea of going out and kind of connecting people through these fitness communities. And I said, you know what? I would rather try and fail than not try at all. Like I feel like there's something there. So I said, you know what? Let's do it. Dove into it head first. Definitely quickly learned a lot of stuff. But again, like you're not going to learn unless you get on the learning curve somewhere. Like you always have to start somewhere. And then I'd say now, like it, do I find what I'm doing fulfilling? 100%. But I'll also say sometimes the fulfilling work kind of sucks. There's like owning your own company like this, there's so many different things to do. You wear so many different hats. Like they say entrepreneurship is hard for a reason. And I'd say right now I'm actually working harder than I was as an investment banker, but I'm 10 times more fulfilled. So I'm so happy doing what I'm doing now. And that's really the difference maker for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely something that we hear over and over again. And I can, echo that sentiment a million times. I mean, once you unlock that purpose and you start to work toward it, even the beauty of it is like, you're not at your finish line. There is
Oh
no,
yeah.
we talk about all the time, there is no real finish line. But like, let's just say there was a hypothetical finish line, even with Lunge, where perhaps, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Let's say your goal is to eventually sell it, right? Like, I'm pretty sure the beauty is in what you're doing now, in building it, in growing it, in unleashing its potential, in getting the feedback from people who are, really finding value in it. And really in maybe looking in the mirror and being like, I did that. Like I did that. Not only did I like build that, but I left a very stable, lucrative career. I took a shot on myself, and I did something that I didn't really know how to do when I first started it. And I think that's really where that sense comes from. Um, and
I,
sometimes people look at you and probably like thought you had it in you the whole time, and you probably and little do they
yeah,
know you were figuring it out every step of the way.
I think you're spot on, and I think it's funny. One little area, just moving towards your passion, like finding your passion and trying to find to do something in that space. I definitely encourage you to try to find a passion that makes a lot of money. Finding your passion and doing something in that direction is the most rewarding thing you could ever do. Like, I feel like that's where you really get that fulfillment. That's really where you love what you do. So you feel like you never have to work a day in your life. And for me, I think that was secretly always um, fitness. And it's funny, even when I look back when I was like in college and selfie sticks existed, when I went abroad, I used to make like a little meme account called Selfie Stick Steve, where I would just take all these fun little dumb photos. But I feel like that content creator side has always been in me. I've always wanted to do that. So when I went out and took that risk, I remember I was like just quit investment banking. One of my friends like, you have to start posting on TikTok. You'd be crazy not to. I think like my fourth or fifth video got like a 250,000 views, and I was like, oh, this isn't that hard. And like that content creator side has always been in me, kind of like this just natural connection side has always been in me, and be able to recognize that and go after it. I think it's something that I'm really proud of, and I just tell to anyone like find your passions and go after it.
Well, I think there's a whole community of not just listeners to this podcast, but a lot of similar podcasts who need to hear what you just said, because I think there's a lot of people who hesitate to kind of just go for it. And my question to you is, you know, when it comes to taking those kind of leaps, where's your head when it comes to calculating the risk? Like, you don't really have much to lose if you don't go for it, right? Like, what's your thought process there?
My thought process, that I really do, one thing that I'm really grateful for is my family is super close. I know that if one day, if I lost everything, like my business, my bank account, like everything, at the end of the day, if my family is still there, I have everything. So I think having that just reassurance and their support allowed me to really take this leap and, just say, I wanna go do something big. And I will say, I know that this is getting a little deep here too. This is kind of something that happened to me way back in college. But one of my best water polo friends, he ended up passing away of cancer. We were both playing out on the West Coast. He's a stud, the best guy. Passed away of cancer, 21 years old. Then 4 days after he passed away, my grandma passed away at 90 years old. And to me, that just over time, just kind of like put together in my head that, hey, look, you have one life. You could die at 21, you could die at 90 years old. Go live your life to the max because you need to learn to be grateful for every day on this planet. And you can't live a big, fun life without taking risks. So to me, leaving investment banking, it wasn't really that hard of a decision because I felt like I had that little extra something in there. Like, hey, of course I'm going to take this risk, like, why wouldn't you? So
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's true. And I think a lot of times, like that kind of specific situation where you lose two people in a short span of time, especially, when you think about how young he was and then you think about your grandma, that is a life altering circumstance, right? Because it really does put things into perspective. And I think a lot of people, kind of coast through life. And yes, we do encounter death. Sometimes it's unexpected, sometimes it's more expected. And then we just kind of say, okay, like such is life. And I think there's something special about being able to take a step back after experiencing that and saying, it doesn't have to be that way. Like I can own this life now. Like I can own it. I can make decisions based on what this experience has taught me. And I can pass that on to others too. I mean, like that's another really important element of it, right? Like, even if you're not directly speaking about this experience with other people, people are going to see how you move, whether it's in business, or in sport or even in relationships. And they're going to say, that guy's got something and I want to be like him, or I want to learn how his mind works so that I can carry that forward, because that kind of that kind of awareness, it radiates. Like, I think what I'm getting at here is people who aren't afraid to take risks like this attract other people, because other people generally want to know what makes Steve successful, not just, again, in a money way, but what makes him successful in his relationships.
And I think it really attracts the right kind of people as well. I think when someone sees what they're doing, there's almost two sides of it. And this is kind of like, I don't know, when I started getting kind of big to content creation, now I have over like 700,000 followers. I've only been posting for like 2 or 3 years. And it's funny, I saw some of my friends would get a little insecure about it and be like, oh, he's kind of getting all this, and didn't really like that it's getting all that attention. While there's some other people who were like, this is so awesome. I'm so happy for you. Like, how do you do it? I want to get into content creation. And I'm always so happy to help other people out, because it's the people who see that and really kind of want to learn and grow with you. Rather than just kind of bring you down. And I think that's two very different breeds of people. And that's one thing I like about entrepreneurship, is that everyone is there to help each other up. That's something that I've been really grateful for. The amount of people who've helped me and asked nothing in return is unbelievable. So
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up something that's really, really important. I've said it multiple times on this podcast, but I think hearing it from you is going to be even more special. Multiple times on this podcast, I've talked about how when you come across people with, elite athletic backgrounds, in particular athletes who've like really succeeded on big stages, one of the things that you'll realize is, like, you've already proven yourself in that field. You're not here to put anybody down at this point. Like, that, you get no value of putting anybody down at this point. And I think a lot of people may come across someone with a resume like yours and perhaps be intimidated. But I preach, like, hey man, like, guys like Steve are actually the people that are more likely to pull you up, because they have nothing to gain by putting you down. And I'd love to hear you kind of speak to that, in particular around how, your experience as an athlete, competing on a national stage and kind of getting to the highest level of sport, helped you shape your mindset around the other arenas of life with regards to how you can employ it as a leader.
yeah. So I'm happy to actually, I can start off with a funny story. I was talking to someone probably about a month or two ago. Um, and I think this guy, he's worth over $1 billion. And he had a buddy who started this hedge fund that significantly outperformed every other hedge fund on Wall Street. And everyone was asking, how do you do it? How do you do it? Like, what's your investment thesis? Like, how do you get these kind of returns? And his answer was, we only hire college athletes. Um, and I thought that was a really cool story. And I think, trying to dissect that, I think there's an underlying factor of being an athlete, and not necessarily an athlete. I think anyone can go to the gym, like, have that connection through fitness to business. And it's just that underlying heart, doing whatever you need to do to get it done. The preparation behind the scenes, training every single day to be the best version of yourself. I feel like there's so much behind that when you do get to the platform where you need to perform, you're ready, you're seasoned, you're confident. And I think that just, whether it's any sort of fitness, whether it's athleticism, going to the gym, whatever, that really translates to whatever you do in your professional career.
Absolutely. To that point, talk to me about, what your relationship is with, I don't want to say failure, but not necessarily getting the results that you want.
I think the answer is, it all comes from a place of passion. And I think the hardest part about entrepreneurship is, a lot of people don't tell you this. It's probably, everyone sees all the good stuff. They see me getting featured in the Wall Street Journal, Today Show, Good Morning America. They're like, oh my God, you must be so happy. I'll tell you right now, probably like 2% of entrepreneurship is getting wins. The other 98% is putting your head down, grinding. Friday, I work till 3 a.m., trying to get a bunch of docs out. And that's a side that you really don't see. And there's times where you just don't make much progress. Stuff is always going to come up, there's always fires to put out. But it's all about, at the end of the day, the passion and understanding that you're on the journey and that if you don't try, nothing will happen. So as long as you keep trying and trying, eventually something will happen.
Absolutely. I mean, like it's all just a culmination of small wins, right? And those wins come when you least expect them. There's no like it's a chart, right? It doesn't go like this. It goes like this. And so it never really works in that direct trajectory. So that kind of takes me to my next question. How long have you been working on Lunge now?
So I've been working on Lunge for probably a full 2 years, really kind of 6 months, planning everything, doing all our surveys, getting all the information we needed, trying to discover what the app really needed to look like. And yeah, launched about 18 months ago. I'll say what I did, I used to go to a bunch of fitness classes. And after the class, I'd always ask, be like, I'd go and ask the instructor if they'd be open to doing some kind of um, singles fitness class. And some of the single ones were like, you know what? That actually sounds really fun. Yeah, let's do it. I'm like, hey, let's collab with the company that I own. Didn't tell them that we just launched like 2 weeks ago. But they're like, hey, yeah, let's do it. And then that actually turned into like a nationwide tour of doing events with Barry's Boot Camp, Equinox, Soul Cycle, Orange Theory. It drove a bunch of, kind of, I'd say, organic recognition to the app, which is really cool. Cost us $0 to do. And with that, that was, I'd say, a pretty big defining moment for us. And it just really was because I just had to go pay $40 for each one of these classes. But I literally researched the
Which you
instructors
probably would have done
before.
anyway.
Yeah, see which ones were like the right people and then go up in person to have this conversation. So
How many iterations of the idea have there been? I'm sure you don't have an exact number, but like when you think about it, you left the bank, you're kind of exploring an idea. What was the original idea?
the original idea was, I'd say our MVP was really developed to connect people at the same gyms. It's a lot more location based. So, at the time I was going to Equinox, I was like, hey, I'd love to date someone kind of within my in real life circle here at Equinox. Probably also, this is when I was an investment banker. I was like, also, they probably have a good job. They care about health and wellness. I'd love to meet someone like this. And then that really developed into more of not just location based, but more of just kind of connecting fitness communities and really diving into the in real life aspect of that.
Would you consider yourself a tech guy, a health and wellness guy, a dating guy?
I'd say health and wellness, dating, and yeah, tech. I'm not an expert in tech. I'm a non-technical founder. I've definitely learned a lot about it throughout this process. But I would also say in entrepreneurship in the early bootstrap days, you probably wear a million different hats. I'd say I'm part-time designer, part-time, content creator. Like you do all the marketing stuff, part-time accountant, everything. So you just learn a lot throughout that process.
But I asked that question because as it develops, right? Like you're now more front and center than ever. And as it continues to grow, as with any major company, right? Like you're gonna be the face of it. And like do you care at this point, when people are, look at you and say, like he's the guy behind that app, like and people might even take it the wrong way, to be honest. But like, who does he think he is? Like, kind of leading this kind of platform.
Look, I have 700,000 followers on social media. If I cared about each what one of those people thought about me, that'd be a lot of worrying.
Yeah,
I think
no one has time for that.
ever since I started putting myself out there and seeing the positive um, results I got from doing that, just encouraged me to do it more and more. Like I could literally care less what someone else thinks about me. If they hate me, I literally
It
don't
doesn't
care.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I obviously what I'm doing, like I'm literally helping people connect, whether it's friends or romantic relationships, whatever it is. It's awesome. I know what I'm doing is right. So if you don't like me, I hate to say it, I'm not really too concerned
That's
about it.
no
Yeah.
one has time for that.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I want to learn a little bit about the research, right? And I'll kind of give you my personal take on this. And I joked around with you like before we got on this podcast that my wife and I, we had a conversation the other day, and she kind of made a joke before I even knew you were coming on this show. Before I even knew about Lunge, she's like, like if there was an app like that, like before you and I got back together, like there's a good chance that we wouldn't even have gotten together at that point. And that's because I was, really deep into the fitness world in the city. That's where I spent 95% of my time. That's where I built the strongest sense of community. That's where I feel like I formed the deepest relationships. And I always joked around at the time, like, because the other apps kind of sucked. Like, and the other thing about it, not only did they suck, but I'm not just going to be generic about the fact that they sucked. Um, I was at the time it was Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. I don't even know what's out there now. And I remember I remember Hinge was the one that like people were starting to get more traction on, toward the end of my single years. But the one thing that I hated, and that I've heard from a lot of people in particular over the last 4 or 5 years, people that I know that are single, is the fact that they couldn't connect with people in arenas that really represented, who they wanted to be. Every single date was really founded on just getting not blackout drunk, but just drinking a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And it, it's that's kind of one of the reasons why I started Lunge was because I was single and I was just so frustrated with these apps. I studied business and social psychology in college. I was always interested on like the romantic side of social psychology. Like statistically speaking, where's the best place to find, your person? Um, and the answer was in places where they spend their time doing the same thing in the same place. And that's really what led to Lunge. And I think it's not about exactly pinpointing like where exactly you do that. I think it's more about what your fitness community says about you. It's more kind of like-mindedness there. For example, when you look at the New York City Marathon, we're the New York City Marathon dating app. Every single person who ran the New York City Marathon can download Lunge, match exclusively with people who are also in that community. And what's cool about that is if you run the marathon, there's something under that, a really cool quality. And when you look, if you download a Tinder or Hinge or something, the likelihood of just going out getting drinks and finding that similar something under the hood there in that person it's so random. Like the only reason why you both swipe right on each other is because you both find each other attractive. It has nothing to do with compatibility. So we try to take that an extra layer deeper and really within the fitness side, because what I talked to earlier, like if you are very into fitness, even if you like to go out on walks during the day, if you're active, that's a really good quality to have in a person. It bleeds into other areas of life. And I think people are trying to meet other people with that similar, just kind of, background there.
No, I agree. A lot of times, like if you're a runner, you just want someone to run with. If you like to go out on walks, you just want to go out on a walk with, and you don't want to pretend to be someone that you're really not, which a lot of times you had to do just to kind of get the conversation started. And then the other thing was, even if you wanted to date or meet people in the fitness arena, you didn't want to take the risk of either coming off the wrong way, not connecting for whatever reason, and then losing your ability to keep showing up to your gym or to your safe haven, whatever that may have been. And I feel like the way that Lunge has done it is in a way where it's accepted. It's like you're part of this broader, and it may not work. Like you may not meet the love of your life, or you may not, hit it off with this person, but you both understand that you're here for the same reason, to like better yourselves and hopefully meet other people.
100%. And it's kind of funny. I'd say when you connect people at the scale we do with Lunge, there's always going to be some kind of statistic anomaly or something like that. I think we we've heard one or two stories of over the summer here in New York City, especially. We were getting 1,200 people together, all in the lunge way. If you're single, wear black. If you're taken, wear colors. And some people would go and be like, "Oh man, my ex girlfriend was there," and we're like, sorry, not much we can do about that." But I think what the really cool part about it was said everyone's there just to meet new people. People would say I'd rather go to 10 of these run clubs and not meet anyone than go on another crappy hinge date. And it's just kind of the idea of connecting in real life, connecting through fitness. Like there's something really special about that. And yeah, I'd say even the amount of relationships that we got out of it is unbelievable. I mean, I get a bunch of texts like from all my friends be like, "Oh, I talked to this guy the other day. He met his girlfriend at lunch." Like,
You're gonna be invited to
and
a lot of weddings one day. One day you're gonna
oh
be yeah,
yeah,
if you're not already.
I sure hope so. It's funny. Some people we actually met a couple that's now moving in with each other. So yeah, I think it's awesome. We were joking around, me and some of the lunch team were like, "Do you think we could put in our terms and conditions if you meet through lunch, you have to invite us to your wedding?"
Yeah, no, I mean, for real. I mean, I think, um, one thing that's evident is that in a post-COVID landscape, like, I'm just gonna call it like it is, the single world kinda sucks right now.
It's
It's
brutal.
been brutal. I feel very grateful and very thankful that things worked out for Christine and I, and, like, we got back together during COVID, but we say all the time in talking to some of our single friends, it is pretty horrible out there right now,
I I agree.
specifically in the New York area.
Well, I can kind of tell you why. There's a couple reasons for that. I'd say the biggest reason really is these big dating apps. That's the majority of way how people are really connecting romantically nowadays and sourcing these relationships. But when you look at a Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, their goal, they're all public companies. I hope you know that. And then if you look at their stock, Bumble used to trade at $75. They're trading at $6, $7 now, which is unbelievable how quickly that has declined. So if you look at the landscape, they're a public company. Their number one priority is delivering returns to their shareholders. So they say, hey, look, there's this monster amount of people on the app. They can do two things with this. Number one, just help people connect, fall in love. Number two, make a lot of money with it. They are so close to over here that it's so inefficient for people to use these apps. Um, a really great example, if you send a like to someone, say, hey, I'd love to meet you. The fact that that other person can't see that like unless they pay is an absolute joke to me. I'm just like, how
We're
how is
we're
that a
we're
thing?
going so far away from the actual purpose of this.
Exactly. It's just too far. And then, there's no other competitors in the industry. Bumble and Hinge or Bumble and Match Group. Match Group owns Tinder and Hinge. They own 80% of the industry. So they really dictate how it moves. So it's pretty tough.
Hey all, it's me, Bishoy. As a marathon runner and endurance athlete, I've come to understand the importance of properly fueling your body for preparation and recovery. Every day, you get a shot at success. How you start your day typically paints a picture of what the rest of the day will look like. Start your day with a super convenient, healthy, and delicious nutritional win. Meal One by Creatures of Habit. Overnight oatmeal packed with 30 grams of plant-based protein, chia, flax, and pumpkin seeds. Vitamin D3, omega-3s, a probiotic, and digestive enzymes made in under 1 minute. Stop wasting time or worrying about what to eat as your first meal of the day. Start with Meal One. Visit creaturesofhabit.com, creatures spelled with a K, and use code MILE40 for 15% off a one-time purchase or the first subscription order payment. It's a really interesting concept, right? Because when do you remember the acquisition price of Tinder and Hinge?
I'm not sure exactly.
But we're talking billions. Like we're talking about a
Oh,
lot
yeah,
of
for
money,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
These companies are valued at such a high valuation, right? And I think especially when the apps were coming out at first, the buzz was this is going to be the future way of dating. And no way of dating is foolproof as we've come to, realize and recognize. And this leads me to ask you what you're doing is a wonderful response to what we've seen over the last couple of years. And it is something that people are craving and people need and people want. But how do you continue to sustain it in a way where you're successful and your users are also successful? Um, like at what point do you have to cut yourself off?
That's a really good question, because a lot of people ask, like, "Hey, look, you help someone connect and fall in love. They're not going to be using your app anymore." And we say, "Yeah, but they're going to be a lifetime ambassador for us." When if you go to a Lunge wedding, I can guarantee they're going to talk about how they met on Lunge. Your friends getting in relationships, going on these great Lunge dates. That's what's going to set us apart. And the way we think about ourselves, you have in real life connections right here. We like to think that Lunge is a platform to leverage these in real life connections. People are at the same fitness communities. They're right there. They're in your circle. We are a platform that you can use to connect with those people. When you look at a Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, if this is in real life, they are on the outskirts over here. They have their own people in there. There's no overlap with in real lifeness. And they call it algorithms, but really it's just endless swiping, trying to, you know, find a random person. And the crazy part about it, these apps really don't treat guys that well either. The average male has to send 1,500 likes to go on one date, which is ridiculous. Like that's it's just so inefficient. Um, Meanwhile, you can go to one of our IRL events and meet 10 people right there. Which is the equivalent of 15,000 likes on an app. So we like to think that we're doing it very differently.
No, I agree. I think you are doing it very differently. I guess let me redirect my question to you as the founder and the owner, right? Like, and someone with a banking background and who understands the business side of this. Do you fear, or how do you handle maintaining the integrity of the product if the product becomes so successful that someone comes to you and says, "Steve, I'll buy this from you for X amount of dollars." Right? Like you don't want to turn into, and that's you're in a good spot right now. You're in a really good spot right now. You don't want to
The,
turn into Bumble.
the way I envision this is I need to have my hands on it the whole time. If we ever sell, I need to be the guy to be a part of it moving forward. That's the important thing. I need to have the authority to run it how I want to run it. Um, and I think that's the important part about this whole thing, because the company that wins, I'll tell you this right now, I'm shocked that these other apps don't do this. The company that wins is the company that drives the most romantic relationships. That's the company that at the end of the day is going to be able to make the most money. And I think that's why we've been so successful to date. I think that's why we will be successful in the future. And if I ever were to sell the company, there'd have to be some kind of clause in there where I have to stay around. Because I mean, this is something that's so core to me, so important to me. And I would hate to see Lunge just turn into like one of these kind of public company money making machines.
Based, this is more out of curiosity for me, based on research and what you know. Which app is the most popular right now?
Right now, I'd say actually Hinge is really the leader. They provided a lot of growth for Match Group, Bumble, Tinder. They've really, really struggled. And at the end of the day, these companies are making billions of dollars, not doing anything. So, and they're just kind of like, why would we change and jeopardize this whole thing? People don't know what's next for Gen Z. We like to think Lunge is what's next for Gen Z. Um, and I'd say, there's some sneaky companies in there, like a Grinder. Grinder's actually, their market cap is higher than Bumble. They they used to be very, very open and like kind of helping people connect. They moved more towards the monetization side. So, they've actually delivered some really strong earnings, which obviously increased their stock market price. But again, that might kind of limit their growth moving forward, limit their retention. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But yeah, that's really the kind of the main layout of the dating space right now.
Do you think of um, do you think about your network more as a community right now? Like, do you look at it as more of a community or more of an app?
we look at it as communities, realistically. Um, we like to think like, hey, we're just leveraging technology to enhance these social connections through communities. That's how we think about it. So the communities are there. They've done their work to build the communities. We're just a tool you can use to, 10x the amount of connections you actually have within that community.
And again, this is more out of curiosity as well. When you think about the technology, has there been anything special about the technology that differentiates it? Or even if you think about even all the companies in general, where are they moving from a technological perspective to perhaps enhance the experience?
I mean, Gen Z's done with the swiping. You talk about dating app fatigue. They're trying to figure out what's next, and like what does that really look like, and really trying to limit the superficialness through these apps. And they haven't answered that question. I actually think we're at a really cool turning point right now in the industry where it's very clear what we were doing is not working. There's no growth potential there. And a lot of people are asking what's next and they don't know. So I think right now is actually the period where you're going to foster some of the winners for when you look out in the next 5 years. The winners will be built in this time period right now.
So, been 2 years. It sounds like, I'm sure there have been lots of sleepless nights, lots of nights where, you had to kind of really think about the direction of the business. Was there ever a point where you had to consider maybe this isn't going to work out?
Yeah, I told myself I'd give myself a full year. When I left banking, I said I was going to give myself a full year to go out, start this app. If it doesn't work, I could just go back into banking somewhere else, make good money there. And after that year, I was like, you know what? I we've seen decent progress, almost like a proof of concept, but we weren't exactly where we wanted to be, I'd say. I knew there was something there. I was like, like we got to figure this out. It actually kind of came closer to when we started our run club. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give this 6 more months. That's when we started the run club back in May. That's when all that happened. We blew up like crazy. We noticed that people really, really want these in real life communities. Now we host the number one largest IRL events of any social or dating app. And we really kind of found our niche, found our pocket. So I think it was just that kind of like, you know, am I okay to keep doing this? And I just knew kind of what we talked about earlier. I was so fulfilled doing it that I was almost just kind of like, of course I'm going to keep going.
I love
So
that. Tell us more
yeah,
about this run club for the listeners out here. Where is it?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So back in May, Lunge started a run club, really based for singles to meet like-minded people. If you're single, you wear black. If you're taking, you wear colors. And we started off with like 20 people. About a month later, we had 100 people. About a month after that, we had 500 people. And then pretty soon after that, we have 1,200 people running the streets of New York City, connecting. And then we also kind of partner with a lot of bars afterwards to host like these massive just singles events. So everyone in black, everyone post run, everyone's just kind of barriers are down. And it was an unbelievable sight to see. We've actually started run clubs across a bunch of other cities, Philadelphia, Miami, Dallas, a bunch of new cities coming soon. So it's been a really really awesome experience. And you could also sign up a Lunch Run Club through the app and then connect to people who you might have missed there as well. We've had lots of great progress with that. So it's all just like so many connections coming out of it. Something that we're really proud of.
You know what's amazing about that is that there's been run clubs for years in the city. And there's been just a lot of people who sign up for these run clubs because they know that there are people who are like minded, who are good looking, who they'd want to speak to at these run clubs, but they don't because they're not sure, like, is this person single? Is this person not single? Like, do they want to talk to me? Do they not want to talk to me? And it was as simple as you just saying, this is the purpose of this run club. You wear this, you wear that. And it's so black and white. And for years, I think, we avoided being that direct about it. And I'm not surprised at all, obviously, with regards to how it's taken off. Um, it's the perfect storm.
Yeah, no, it really is. And kind of to your point there too, I think something in the world that's missing nowadays, especially through like in real life connections, is being able to be intentional. I think that is that is important. In the olden days, when our parents are meeting, you could go up to someone on the street, strike up conversation, get their number and kind of go out with them later that week. But nowadays, people aren't really doing that because of these dating apps and stuff like that. So I feel like these in real life relationships in a setting where it's okay to be intentional is it's kind of going back towards when our parents were connecting and everything like that. So it's something that's pretty cool.
Steve, this has been so awesome. We're gonna start wrapping this up. I think fun question I want to ask you, just so the audience knows, is how's this impacted your own personal life, relationship wise? Talk to us little bit about where this is taking you on a personal front.
Yeah, I mean, relationship wise, I've seen people, through the app. I've had a couple good relationships out of that through the Run Club. I even had some good relationships as well. I will say I'm definitely looking to kind of more so marry than just kind of date around. So kind of looking for the one. Definitely moving in the right direction. I think every Wednesday being able to go to these events is kind of cool. And yeah, definitely looking for the one. And also just personally, just so grateful to be on this journey. It really does feel like a journey. And I feel like it's not just lunge, it's the personal growth journey. And I'm really, really grateful that I took that leap from investment banking to go into this. And I will say, even to all my friends, they all kind of talk about this idea or, they want to start posting content. They want to do something. And I'm like, just go do it. Stop talking about it. Go do it. You want to do it. Go do it. So that's one thing that I'm really grateful that I took that leap. And I encourage anyone else to go do that as well.
Yeah, man, absolutely. My last question for you is, we look at the full body of work here, right? We look at your experience as an athlete, which is definitely something that distinguishes you at an early age in life. Then we think about the fact that you put yourself in a very difficult career. You talk about your experience losing a friend and losing your grandmother in a short period of time, and how that really kind of made things click for you around your relationship with risk taking, and then you employed that clearly by leaving the stability of banking, which again, I don't want to undermine. We hear it so many times on this show, especially around that industry. But people need to understand it's a huge risk, like monetarily in particular. It's a huge, huge risk, and you're doing it because you are seeking out, what it is that you're actually called here to do. Um, Talk to me about the key values and the key drivers that you'd want to leave the audience with, right? With regards to navigating life's path, not just as a businessman, but as an individual seeking to, close out the remaining chapters in your journey.
Yeah, I'd say one thing you always got to do is just always keep driving forward. And one thing that I've always thought about is kind of like the the day I die, whether that's tomorrow, forever, who knows. But I always think about like my kind of ghosts and different versions of me, the people who took those risks, the people who went after whatever I wanted to do. And I feel like to be at the end of the road and just have so much missed potential. There's other guys there who started this company, started posting the content, all that kind of stuff. And I think about that in today's day and age. And that drives a lot of my decisions. Say, you know, do what you want and work towards that goal. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be easy. That's why I think doing something that you're really passionate about is important. It'll help you really be more relentless in whatever you're doing. That will really kind of transform into something special. And it will at least get you moving in the right direction. If you don't know exactly where you're going, just move forward, move in that direction, and then you'll kind of navigate your way through that. And again, like I said, I'm just grateful to be on that journey. That's a journey I feel like I put myself on. I'm still kind of navigating it, but I will say it's a lot more fulfilling and just like the life you live is so much better once you do that.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you for bringing us on in real time, for letting us in on, how you've navigated the path, for being real. I mean, like, that's really the most important thing. Your authenticity, your vulnerability, your ability to kind of lay it out for us and talk about a topic that a lot of us care about, but don't necessarily talk about as much as we'd like to sometimes. And it's also really reassuring to know that the person behind this kind of platform is a good person. Like that's the other thing I really want to call out. Maybe I should have called out earlier. When you think about leading a platform that's bringing people together and a platform that's built on building connection and relationships and hoping that relationships prosper, you really want the person behind it to be a good person because, those intentions are important. So I want to say thank you for coming on and thank you for letting us in on that.
No, thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. And no, this has been great. Love what you're doing with the podcast. And I think a lot of people nowadays, I have a lot of friends who feel kind of stuck. And I think listening to these conversations, it's important to get these kind of perspectives because they really can help a lot of people. So, thank you for doing what you do. I think this podcast and your mission is awesome. So.
You got it, brother. Thank you. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode of the Mile 40 podcast, go ahead, subscribe, leave a review, and share the word. Thank you for being a part of the Mile 40 family. And let's unite in showing the world that comebacks are always greater than setbacks.